We're back. Welcome, Ruth.
Thank you.
We just saw a video there about climate change and adaptation in Africa, and you are joining us. You're here from Kenya.
Yes, I am from Kenya.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and about what you do?
I'm a learning and gender and governance advisor with Adaptation Learning Program in Africa. And this program is focusing sub-Saharan Africa. That means the countries that are in the middle of Africa. And in these countries, there are 4 countries: Ghana, Niger, Mozambique, and Kenya.
So you are coordinating climate change adaptation for these 4 countries?
Yes, yes. From
Sounds like fun.
Unit from Kenya, yes.
Is it a fun job?
It's interesting to also look at the diversities in countries and the way they are adapting in relation to climate change.
So Ruth, tell me, how long have you been in your job?
Not for long. I've been there for 1 month.
Really?
Yes.
And the whole program? Okay, tell me, the whole program, how long has it been?
The whole program we started 1 year ago. Yeah.
Okay.
And
So
it's a new program.
it's interesting to see so many organizations starting to put adaptation as a core kind of function of their programs. What do you think about that?
Yes, it is a new thing today because when we look at climate change, it's there to stay with us. And then people have been trying to adapt over time. And then there are lessons at the community level that we have never documented, and it is with the people. And the changes are changing. So the vulnerabilities, the variations are different. So this year will be different from next year, or this year is different from last year. So that tells us we need to do something, put in place a program that would capture the different lessons from the variations that we observe.
So what kind of changes, I mean, I know you're working across 4 different countries, but can you describe what kind of impacts you're facing on the ground? Is it mainly food issues, land issues? What is it exactly?
First, for us, it starts with the temperatures that are changing. And with the change of temperatures, we observe that sometimes people have floods and extreme heat. So when there is extreme heat, they lose the crops, vegetation, they lose the livestock that they depend on, and the people lose the food. So there is no food security. So the effects are many. So, but the root causes are mainly the temperatures that have been increasing. And particularly to describe it from Kenya perspective. And I like the video that we just watched a few minutes ago. And it's just a typical experience whereby as a result of increased temperatures, there is no vegetation cover. So you find that what the people are depending on is being depleted. Then what happens? They try to adapt. They change from now keeping livestock to camels. We saw the camels.
Do people start coming up with these ideas themselves?
The people start because they see that the cattle won't survive, and they try to analyze using their own skills. And surely, when they reason and they see the cattle not able to get the grass, they look at also the small stock, the goats, that can browse on shrubs. Then they kind of reason and say, I think this one can survive, this one won't survive. Let's do away with this.
We were just talking, actually, Adam and I, before that video, about how people, when faced with big challenges like that, they start coming up with very innovative ideas.
Yes, and that's why we now come, like our program, it's a learning program.
Mm-hmm.
That's
yes,
now we
tell us a little bit.
So we want to document these lessons, but build on them using community-based approaches. So that means we will build on the experience the people are having and learn from how they have been adapting over time, document the same, but improve, because
so bring some knowledge in and some knowledge, like expert advice.
Expertise, and put them and share so that others can learn from what has been going on.
I'll just remind everyone that Adam is online waiting for people's comments and messages. And there's something there?
Yeah, there's some really interesting stuff online and some comments coming in. And people have been asking about water security and if people are having difficulty accessing water, or whether this causes tensions, and whether, in general, the kinds of problems that you see in Kenya, whether it's difficulty rearing animals or difficulty with crops, is that causing any tension between communities? Is there a risk that this might contribute to problems on that front?
Yes. We know water is life.
Yes.
And the communities cannot live around a water point, all of them. They need to get space where they can settle and have or build a home. So what happens is that as the temperatures increase, water becomes less because of evaporation and seepage and so forth. They lose the water. Once they lose it, what happens? They tend to now look for alternative sources. So they move towards where there is still water. And as they move towards where there is still water, then
someone else might have thought about that spot as well.
Yes, someone else. So we have immigrants, people moving in from different areas. Then they cause pressure, increase demand, and
who found the well first?
And then the ownership issues comes in. Then if they have bylaws of managing that water point, then they use the bylaws and say, let's test them out. Yeah, but then this one say, we need water. We have to kill you. To get that water, we have to fight. Then they start fighting, the conflicts that now arises. So tensions are there. But the communities tend to come to, because of their own institutional mechanisms for managing their systems. So they use the same to just agree and say, okay, if we'll give you water, this is how it will cost you. Yeah.
So tell us more about can you tell us one of the stories about the people you're working with on the ground, some kind of adaptation project that you're implementing currently?
That's a very interesting perspective. One of the adaptation strategies that people are implementing in the area where, let me just use Kenya.
Yes.
It's a very good example. Or I can use, and maybe possibly Niger. In Kenya, you find that this is a pastoralist community. And in some areas are agro-pastoralists. So the agro-pastoralists live along the river. So a big river in Kenya called River Tana. But the pastoralists live a little bit in the hinterland. So they choose different activities. So those along the river would choose the crops that are short-term, like tomatoes, which will give them income quickly. They will sell. And also those that can benefit from the river water, like bananas. And then those in the hinterland will only they keep goats.
And are we talking about like large settlements? Are we talking about small?
This is small scale, just for food, subsistence.
Small communities.
Small communities.
And indigenous, local.
And the communities, one community could be about 200 households.
Okay.
Yeah, that's small. And people live in communities. They don't live far apart or in individual farms, because they tend to live where there is water.
Okay, so yeah. What are they facing? What are their problems?
The main challenge is accessing water. The other major challenge is accessing education. The schools.
So have you been working with these people yourself?
Yes, I have been working with them, and these communities tend to live around a school, or when they settle, they build a school there and build a shopping center there and a dispensary there. Then they live around that settlement where they have everything. Then another community will have maybe nothing, and they benefit from this other community. So we've been working with them, but then we establish linkages. In some of the problems they have is that we work with other government departments to solve their problems, because we cannot solve everything.
But describe to me a little bit about when you say solving their problems and stuff. What are you doing? So you go there, and what do you do?
What we do, yes. What we do ourselves is assess the situation, work with them to identify projects, and then they identify mainly water project comes in. And then number 2, we need toilets. Because in these communities, because they have been moving from place to place looking for water, because that's the basic thing they consider, and they don't have a toilet.
Well, that's very interesting, because when you think about climate change adaptation, some things we take for granted.
Yes.
Like, you just assume that you have your toilet, but if you're moving around because you have to keep looking for water,
so you just use the bush.
Yeah.
Just the shrubs. But you see, the picture that we saw earlier on, the trees are long gone.
Yes.
So where do we hide for our comfort to help ourselves? So now what happens is, when we take development to the people, we tend to build their settlement and give them the resources and allow them to settle so that they can now put in place the basic needs, the basic requirements. So we take the water projects there, and then support them to construct their sanitation facilities, supporting them, but they also have to contribute in that program.
So Ruth, tell me, we're discussing, your day-to-day job, right?
Yeah.
So it's all about people looking for water, running away from the effects of climate change.
Yes.
Is it depressing?
It can be depressing. It is.
But at the same time...
at the same time, it gives us joy when we go to see them that, wow, the project that we initiated with them is allowing them to really access water just nearby. They used to walk 20 kilometers to a river, and then in the river it's infested by crocodiles. Then the children are taken away by crocodiles. The cows are taken away by crocodiles. So when you bring the water near to them, the risks are reduced. So when you see them and they talk about it, it makes you joyful and you are proud of what you did. So, but what I want to say is, our work would be assess the situation. But you do a community assessment, and then we select the priorities. They say our priority is water. And then next is education, next would be health, next would be sanitation is down there. They don't even think about it because they can use the cat method out there and relieve themselves. But once you have water, they feel comfortable.
I'm just going to steal the microphone from Zaina for a second. It's fascinating to hear about the kind of these frontline situation, and you meeting people on a day-to-day basis who are being impacted by climate change. And I wonder, how do you feel when you come to a conference centre like this and you see the people who are trying to solve it at an international level? Can you feel the connections between Article 1.6, paragraph 4.7 and what's happening on the ground? Does it feel like this is connected to the problems that Kenya is facing?
Yeah, when from the experience that we've had right now is that for me, I have to position myself because the rural people, vulnerable people, those who have been trying to adapt to the changes depend on me. So there is a link that we are seeing right now, that the text that goes with adaptation, the adaptation issues are featuring because women issues are being addressed. Vulnerable communities, the most vulnerable is included there, but discussions are still going on. So the challenge for us who are here is to ensure that we bring on board the issues that relates to that common man who is really vulnerable and struggling to adapt on a daily basis or on an annual basis.
And I think maybe it helps to explain why these talks are so slow, because when each sentence means so much to the people here, and where a comma comes makes a huge difference to thousands, potentially millions of people's lives around the world. You can see why people are happy to argue about this.
Yes, that's the truth. And that's why it's taking long. And it's better we take time on it, but have it right. So that once we implement it, it is solving the issues that actually we are faced as development agents.
And Ruth, just to end our very lovely conversation, really enjoying it very much. Do you have a message to the future generations of Kenya? If you imagine, your children, grandchildren living way out there in the future, looking for water maybe, I don't know, what would you say to them?
I would tell them, let's protect our environment. Let's not take too much from it, but let's do it sustainably, because what we do to the environment, it will give it back to us. What you do to somebody else, it will go around and come back to you. As you take too much, it will give you too much. If it is negative, it will give you negative. If it's positive, it will give you positive things. And it will affect our generations if we do negative things to the environment. And that's why we are seeing now the effects in terms of water, the heat. These are all effects. But there is a root cause. It's the environment that we are destroying. And it's working against us. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining us on the show.
Yeah, thanks very much. It's been really interesting to talk to you.
Thank you.